if we can give a definition of terrorism, a textbook definition, combining many definitions, so I've never seen this in any textbook. So having read many textbooks and even taught many texts on the subject, I'll give you my textbook definition. Terrorism is random violence directed against a civilian population to affect a political outcome. So I'm bringing together many people's definitions. Random, indiscriminate violence against a civilian population or a segment of a civilian population to affect a political outcome. This is what they say in the textbooks. Now, based on this definition, a Muslim cannot be a terrorist because a Muslim cannot fight non-combatants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. To fight in the way of Allah, those who fight you. Those who fight you, combatants. Fight them. Fight in the way of Allah, those who fight you, but do not transgress. Don't go beyond these limitations. Verily, Allah loves not those who transgress. So by definition, a Muslim cannot be a terrorist. Now it's interesting that despite the fact, as we said, that globally, Muslims are the most terrorized people on earth. And the evidence for that, you look at what people constitute the major percentage of refugees on this earth. People have been driven from their homes. People have had their lands usurped by armies, by mercenaries, by vigilantes. The overwhelming majority are Muslims in Philistine, Palestine, Bosnia, Kosovo, Shishan, Kashmir, the Philippines. We could go on and on. And certainly there are large numbers of non-Muslim refugees, but the overwhelming majority are Muslims. Despite that, we are presented as the terrorists. And this is due in large part to sophisticated acts of mental manipulation. And in this country, a lot of it is media-induced, if we can introduce a new term into the discourse. Media-induced perceptions. We said terrorism is random violence against civilian populations to affect the political outcome. Despite this being the definition, no one in this country views the Israeli bombing of Beirut in 1982 as an act of terrorism. The targets were a civilian population, indiscriminately targeted, with every known conventional ordinance, short of nuclear bombs, phosphorus bombs, cluster bombs, napalm, etc. The whole array, resulting in the death of 25,000 civilians, 200,000 homeless, the destruction of blocks and blocks of civilian neighborhoods to affect clearly stated political objectives. Despite this, no one views this as terrorism. On the other hand, the bombing of Hezbollah's bombing of the Marine barracks in 1984 is viewed as one of the greatest acts of terrorism directed against Americans. But if we step back, who was targeted? Civilians? No, military personnel in a military installation, in a war zone. And it's interesting to ask a question. If Hezbollah owned a bomber, which they don't, and flew overhead and bombed the barracks, would it be described as terrorism? So how we perceive things and how things are presented to us goes a long way in how we view this phenomenon. Finally, In this regard, we have to note that terrorism generally is the recourse of the weak. Those who don't have the bombers, who don't have access to large stockpiles of conventional weapons, those are the people who generally resort to terrorism. As such, as Muslims, we're warned against this course of action. Why? When we're weak, we're told to be patient. We're told to do everything to repulse any aggression against ourselves with peace and an effort at coexistence, peaceful coexistence. As the poet says, "Darihim ma dumta fi darihim." To do anything short of compromising your religion to please them, as long as you're in their abode. This is what we're taught. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, and they repulse wickedness with good. They repulse wickedness with good. And one of the commentators on this verse, he says that they repulse vile actions and physical harm done to them with peace and this effort at compromising, short of compromising the religion. Mudara. It said al-fuhsh wal-adha bis-salami wal-mudara. So this is an aspect of Islam. This is part of the sunnah to govern our actions when we're weak. And as Muslims we're taught this. The Prophet ﷺ, when the Muslims were weak, a man asked to come see him. And the Prophet said to Aisha radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, what a wicked man he is. And then when the man came, but let him come in. When the man came in, he spoke to him so kindly and softly, Aisha was taken aback. When he left, she said, how could you treat him like this when you described him as being so wicked? He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the most loathful people are those whom people leave because of their wickedness. One of the Sahabi, he said, radiyallahu anhum, that we used to smile in people's faces and we were cursing them in our hearts. So they were presenting one face to repel the wickedness of people. Muhammad bin al-Hanafiya, the son of Ali bin Abi Talib, but not from Fatima, therefore his lineage is identified through his mother, al-Hanafiya, he said, لَيْسَ بِحَكِيمٍ من لا يعاشر بالمعروف من لا يجد من معاشرته بدا حتى يجعل الله له مخرجا أو حتى يجعل الله له فرجا. He said, it's not wisdom that you don't treat people with good and kindness whom you find no other recourse until Allah Ta'ala makes for you a way out. So this is a whole area of Islam governing our interaction with our enemies or with people who oppress us when we're in a state of weakness. And we'll come back to this, inshallah, later. Now we'd like to move on. So this is one meaning of fighting in Islam, to physically fight, but under certain conditions.